Aliens keep arriving in Japan, and the situation is getting more and more tense. After all, this is a threat classified on the same level as Ryomen Sukuna, an alien with horns who seems to be the most powerful so far, along with another who strongly resembles our late Tengen. So what kind of connection could they have? Meanwhile, Yuka and Tsurugi, the grandchildren of Yuta Okkotsu and Maki Zenin, discover the location of the alien ship carrying the 50,000 refugees from Shimuria. And I have a theory that might explain the main question about this Jujutsu Kaisen sequel. Where did these aliens come from? Let's talk about Chapter 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen next module. Recapping the premise of the story, the first chapter opens in the year 2086, about 60 years after the events with Sukuna. We see a spaceship approaching Earth, and inside are beings with white hair and a third eye on their foreheads. And no, I'm not talking about the Otsutsuki. One of them says, "It seems there is a race of people in Japan who possess power similar to ours. On this planet, they are called Jujutsu sorcerers." Back on Earth, we meet the grandchildren of Yuta and Maki Zenin. The girl's name is Yuka, and the boy's name is Tsurugi. As children, Yuka received her grandfather's ring, which carried Rika's power as a form of protection, like an amulet, since she was the weaker grandchild. However, after Yuta's death, the ring was forcibly given to Tsurugi. According to the orders of the Gojo clan, the reason wasn't clearly explained to us or to Tsurugi, but I believe this decision was made for the following reason. Tsurugi was the strongest grandchild of Yuta and Maki, and so the Gojo clan wanted to invest in him. Basically, their goal was to concentrate as much power as possible in the most powerful grandchild. This decision seemed very consistent with the Gojo clan, because historically we know how much this clan depended on centralizing power. Even though several members of the clan were born with the limitless technique, none of them were truly capable of extracting its maximum potential without also possessing the Six Eyes technique. Only the bearer of the Six Eyes could use limitless, without completely exhausting their supply of cursed energy, so the clan relied almost entirely on the existence of the Six Eyes bearer in order to have a respected name and remain relevant in the world's political decisions. Following that logic, it makes sense that the clan decided to force Tsurugi to become the holder of the ring that once belonged to Yuta. Still, this decision left Tsurugi frustrated, because receiving his grandfather's ring felt like being called weak. To him, it was almost an insult. And since Tsurugi inherited the heavenly restriction from his grandmother Maki Zenin, he was born with very little cursed energy. In exchange, however, his physical strength was absolutely overwhelming. Obviously, this was a deliberate writing choice, pure fan service, since everyone loved Maki and Toji. In any case, this whole decision around the ring created a kind of rivalry between the Okkotsu siblings. Tsurugi wants to prove himself strong enough to not need the ring, while Yuka wants to prove her strength in order to reclaim her grandfather's ring. The two are then sent on a mission together with a man named Marulu Valvoli, but he tells them they can just call him Maru. The three end up solving a case involving human trafficking, but not before Maru is revealed to be an alien infiltrated among Earth's sorcerers. At the end of the chapter, he activates an ocular power from his third eye, while the Okkotsu siblings also reveal part of their abilities. Tsurugi wields his cursed tool sword, and Yuka uses a technique that mimics canine fangs. The chapter ends with the revelation of Maru's true identity as an alien infiltrator on Earth. Chapter 2 of this sequel begins in a different way, and unfortunately does not show the continuation of the dialogue between this new trio of protagonists. One of the things that bothered me in this chapter was precisely this continuity problem. Anyway, Chapter 2 begins by going a little back in time, showing how the first contact between the humans of Japan and this alien race happened. Despite the clear tension in the air, humans seem to accept the aliens' existence surprisingly well. And perhaps the reason is the fact that they were already used to dealing with the existence of sorcerers and curses. So, the presence of aliens might not actually shock people that much. The Japanese government then receives two aliens. The first one looks a lot like Maru, but in reality he is Maru's older brother, named Cross, which explains their resemblance. The other one, who resembles Tengen, is actually the diplomatic spokesman of the Shimurians. Just to clarify, for those who don't remember, Tengen lost his physical body, resulting in that bizarre appearance we know. And as we know, Tengen's fate was already sealed at the end of Jujutsu Kaisen, so for now there's no real indication of any connection between this new alien and the Tengen we already know, other than their similar appearance. However, a third alien also decides to appear at this meeting. His name is not revealed, but he is suggested to be the strongest among them. This alien, the one who looks like Tengen, remarks that it made no difference whether he entered unarmed, and that they still needed the approval of the humans for him to take part in the meeting, despite the risks involved. I even saw some people out there commenting that this guy is on the same level as Sukuna, but let's slow down, guys. After the meeting, the Japanese government does mention that this situation is a threat on Sukuna's level, but they weren't talking about one specific alien. In fact, ever since the previous chapter, it's been stated that this whole alien case is treated as a special grade threat on the same level as Sukuna. But still, it's not like the humans know the exact power level of each alien and have already catalogued them all into some kind of interplanetary tier list. They classify it as a special grade threat because they deduce that the aliens could topple the entire country if they wanted to, just like Sukuna was capable of doing. So it was a broader statement. And taking advantage of that hook, I can't help but wonder, how many times is this manga going to keep making the same comparison with Sukuna? Because in the previous chapter, the very first one, they had already made that comparison. And in this chapter, they do it again. Not once, but 3 times. Seriously, 3 times. Once with the government agents, and 2 more times with Tsurugi. The author didn't even bother to change up the characters. He literally had the boy make the same comparison twice in the same chapter. So if in the next chapter they do it again, honestly I think I'm gonna lose it. Because there's no way the author needs to cram the manga with the same reference over and over. We already get it. This is a threat on Sukuna's level. Now show us why they're so powerful. It actually reminds me of the end of Jujutsu Kaisen, when every new sorcerer that showed up had to be compared in some way, in some trait, to Satoru Gojo. Anyway, we then learn that the alien who resembles Tengen can actually speak Japanese, which allows them to converse during the meeting. We don't see much of the dialogue itself, so we still don't know why they're asking for shelter on Earth, or whether this alien race truly consists of refugees, or if they're colonizers in disguise, or maybe they just want to plant a tree on Earth and suck out its chakra. The only thing we know is that the aliens requested for one of their kind to be allowed to accompany Jujutsu sorcerers on certain missions. And this is where we find out how Maru managed to join the same mission as the Okkotsu siblings. He didn't fully infiltrate on his own. He was actually given permission by the Japanese government. Still, we don't yet know the reason why the aliens want this arrangement. Was Maru sent only to earn the sorcerers' trust? Or do they have a bigger or more specific objective behind it? The fact is, the Japanese government didn't have much choice other than to accept their request, since they don't want to risk going to war and ending up massacred. They basically left the meeting with the vibe of, thanks for not invading our country. And one thing I found absolutely hilarious was when one of the government agents said that they wouldn't win the sympathy of the Shimurians with all this stiff adult formality, so they needed the spirit of the new generation. They even went as far as to say they would entrust Japan's future to 2 teenagers. Like really? Who do they think is going to decide whether or not to invade Earth? The alien kids and teenagers? No, it's the alien adults who will make that decision, and it's the humans who will need to decide whether or not to defend Earth. What kind of story is this? Putting the fate of the world in the hands of the next generation of teens. And honestly, the direction of the story seems pretty obvious so far. At some point, this diplomatic relationship is going to blow up. The aliens will end up going to war against Japan, and Maru, even though he's an alien, will take the side of humanity because he likes humans and has grown attached to them. We then cut back to the Okkotsu siblings, discussing what to do next. As I mentioned earlier, we don't actually see any continuation of the ending of chapter 1, when they discovered that Maru was an alien. In fact, it's as if they never talked about it at all afterward, and Maru just left. So instead, they decide to interrogate the sorcerer involved in the human trafficking case they caught in the previous chapter, to try to understand what was going on. I found that a bit odd, to be honest. Sure, they could question the criminal, but they also could have tried asking their own superiors directly. In any case, they feel they still need to see the alien ship with their own eyes. They then discover the ship's location, and that it would briefly become visible during a supply transport carried out by the government. At first, the ship was invisible, probably due to some kind of barrier technique or alien technology, so they head to the mountains and finally come face to face with this colossal vessel. The entire spread shows the underside of the ship. It was so massive that at first it looked like it was lying horizontally, but no, it was standing upright. We can even see what looked like cracks across the ship's structure, and at the very bottom there's a dome that seems to be the navigation chamber. But let's be honest, the design of the ship could have been a little less minimalist. We then see the Okkotsu siblings staring at the vessel, reaffirming their goals of honoring their grandparents' legacy. Yuka wanting to become someone like her grandfather, and Tsurugi wanting to become someone like his grandmother. In this chapter we also see Maru meeting with his older brother. Cross explains that Maru needs to continue living among humans for a while longer, until they gather enough material to judge whether humanity is a race they can coexist with, or whether conflict will be necessary. Toward the end of the chapter, we see Tsurugi approaching who he thought was Maru, and unlike their first interaction, it was interesting to see how Tsurugi had already started accepting Maru's presence, talking with him more casually. They meet on top of a building, apparently by chance. though it's not really explained how they ended up crossing paths there. Tsurugi even warns him to be careful standing on the rooftop, since people below might think he was about to jump and call the police. But the man he thought was Maru just tells him to shut up, not to talk to him, and then simply walks away. It turns out that this wasn't Maru at all, but his older brother. Of course, Tsurugi doesn't realize this, and just ends up getting pissed off. So overall, this was a slower chapter, with a few more details about the alien race, but nothing truly revealing about their real motivation or backstory. And honestly, I think that's a clever move by the author, holding back that information forces us to step into humanity's perspective, constantly questioning whether these aliens are trustworthy or not. But one thing we can speculate about is the origin of this race, which I mentioned at the beginning of this video. A theory I saw online in the past few days suggests that maybe these aliens are actually cursed spirits. We know curses are born from humanity's fear and negative emotions regarding real-world phenomena. So what if the fear of alien invasions gave rise to cursed spirits that embody that very fear of space and extraterrestrial life? That would explain the existence of these aliens through the most fundamental concept of Jujutsu Kaisen itself, cursed energy. Damn, now that would be something. It would be one hell of a twist for Gege to use as justification for introducing aliens into this manga. In the previous video, I mentioned to you guys that I want to make a separate video discussing the controversy about Jujutsu supposedly copying Boruto, and I plan to dive deeper into that topic. But in this video, I wanted to focus more on the chapter itself so as not to derail the discussion too much. So hold on guys, the video on that subject is coming. If you stuck around until the end and really enjoyed this video, remember once again to hit the like button, make sure you're subscribed to the channel with notifications turned on so you'll know when the next Jujutsu video drops here on the channel, alright? And if you missed them, the latest videos will pop up right here on the screen so you can go check them out now. See you next time, ciao!